أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون. الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. واللعنة الدائمة الباقية لأعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم وغاصب حقوقهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك هم خير البرية. صلوات. I would like to begin by thanking Brother Abbas Ali for remembering my late father. Interestingly, the theme that we have tonight about social justice, I was thinking about it. This was not planned. Relates to this element of equality among the mu'mineen. And, one of the major struggles of his early days in Africa was the issue of, convincing the community that you have a duty to open up your minds and your hearts to accept the black Africans. Although they have been there for decades, but there was kind of a barrier in the mind to accept, and share the mazhab of Ahlul Bayt with others. Alhamdulillah, the struggle was there, but eventually he succeeded. And now, the community there in East Africa takes pride in the work of, propagation among the African indigenous people. And this is basically the essence of Shia Islam. In our discussion, we have been talking about the salient features of Shia Islam in a way to respond to the question that why we are Shias. Why do we follow the Ahlul Bayt? We started with the discussion of the name, and then we went on to the methodology of understanding the ayat of Quran, especially about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We went on to the issue of the beginning of the revelation and to see the difference between the Shi'i perspective and the perspective of other Muslims. Last night, we started with a discussion on the concept of justice, all the way from the divine level to the human level. And inshallah, the point was just to make us realize that there are things that we believe and we hold, on to it. But it's important to realize the beauty of that, and that you have this unique way of looking at the concept of adl in Islam. Unlike the other madhahib, they would tell you if it's a just ruler, doesn't matter, you just have to obey. Whereas we look at issues that, justice is the core of our value, all the way from divinity to nubuwwat, to the interaction that we have with one another. Those Muslim scholars, Shia and Sunni alike, when they write the history of Muslim theology, they come up with this term, very interesting, I would like to share with you, which shows the adl perspective of Shia Islam. They say, at-tawheed wal-adl alawiyan, wat-tashbih wal-jabr umawiyan. Means the concept of Tawheed and Adl is actually Alawi concept, whereas the concept of Jabr, compulsion in what's happening, you don't do anything, it's Allah who is doing what Muawiyah is doing, for example. this concept of tashbih also, to look at Allah in a human form, these are all Umayyad concepts. And so Adl is very much known to be the distinctive, feature of Shia theology. Tonight I would like to expand that issue of justice, especially when we talk about the equality among Muslims in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat. Some of the issues are known. I'm just trying to put it in a more systematic way so that you have the complete picture. When it comes to Islam, Islam is not an individual religion. It's not a religion of, personal, spiritual quest. It is there, but the main issue is that Islam is a social religion. When you say the kalima, you become part of the ummah, whether you realize or not. And this is where, this concept of innamal mu'minuna ikhwa comes in from the Quran, that the believers are brethren of one another. And in this brotherhood of the faith, there are no distinctions and barriers as far as the country that you come from, or the color that you have, or the tribe, or a language that you speak, or the culture that you follow. When it comes to your religious identity, you are like anyone else. One of the reasons why the Quraysh in Mecca opposed Rasulullah was this question, this concept of equality of the believers in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who accepted Islam even during the early days, some of them were poor people. Some of them were slaves. Some of them were those who were considered to be of the lower class of the society. And the chiefs of the tribe of Quraysh, at that time, the elders, the influential people in Mecca, they didn't like this. There are many, conversations between them and with Rasulullah, even Quran talks about it, where, they say that, why do you associate and sit down with these people of lower class? That's why we don't want to come to you. You keep them away, then we'll come and, sit down. So even to listen to the message of Islam, they wanted a condition there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was very, clear on this issue, addressing Rasulullah personally. They don't do this. Not that he would do it, but just to confirm the Islamic perspective. It doesn't matter the person who is coming to you is a rich or poor, black or white, master or slave, from higher class of the society or lower class. As long as he's a believer, you have to respect them and accept them all. And this is where we see, even in the example of this surah, Abasa wa Tawalla. Of course, the Shia Sunni perspective of different, majority of them say, it was Rasulullah who frowned and turned away when a poor, person, a blind person came in. It was not Rasulullah. Because the ayat which came before Surah Abasa wa Tawalla had already said, إِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already had given the certificate to Rasulullah that you are on the higher level of character. How can a person with that certificate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, basically ignore somebody or shun somebody just because they are blind and poor? And so we don't believe this was Rasulullah. Quran doesn't give the name. It was one of these called, elite member of the Qurayshi tribe. So that's one issue that we see, that in Mecca, one of the main issue was not Tawheed. That was there an issue, but the bigger problem for them was this social teaching of Rasulullah, that every believer then, irrespective of their color or class or status, from social, political, or the financial status, everybody is same in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat. When it comes to Medina, remember in Makkah, Rasulullah didn't have any control. When it comes to Medina now, he is the head of the community, or the head of state, if we may use that term. One of the first things he does, besides building Masjid al-Nabi so that there will be a place where mu'mineen can gather, even for namaz, one of the first things he realized that the people of Medina, the inhabitants who are known as Ansar, they have their homes, their land, their tribe is there, they are well established. But then you have Muhajirin, a smaller group. Although the translation of Muhajirin is immigrants, but I think during our current, vocabulary, we would say they were refugees. They came with nothing. Most of them who came from Makkah especially, they didn't have anything. So there was a disparity between, the standard of living of the Ansar, who were in their own homes, compared to the Muhajirin, who were like refugees. But they were all Muslims. Already the ayat has come down, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً, they are brothers. But Rasulullah wanted to intensify that bond of relationship and make it more, make it as issue of responsibility. So it was more than once that he actually gathered the Muhajirin on one side and called some of the prominent Ansar on the other side. And then he will call one Ansari forward and one Muhajir forward, and he will say, you are brothers of one another. And the Ansar, Allah praised them on this issue in the Quran. They were so good, many of them actually would go to their home and divide whatever they had from their belongings and give half to their Muhajir brother so that they can, establish themselves. We don't even remember those examples. We don't even talk about it. Those who are established here and the new refugees who come, what do? Of course, our Western governments are very generous on this issue. If you can't do yourself, at least you facilitate from the government, facilities. But this is where we have to think about this community building that Rasulullah started in Mecca. It is not just a building. It's not just, masjid. It's actually establishing this link. On a side note, I would say here, not relevant to this topic, in one of those famous incidents when he established this ukhuwat between Muhajir and Ansar, at the end, there was one Muhajir left alone. He comes to Rasulullah and he says, Rasulullah, what about me? Why don't you pair with me with a Ansar? This is a young Mujahid there. And Rasulullah looked at him and he said, Ya Ali, anta akhi fi dunya wal akhirah. Ali, you are my brother in this dunya and akhirah. But I have a question there. The issue of brotherhood was between Muhajir and Ansar. Ali is Muhajir, and what is Rasulullah? He is a Muhajir. Their situation, financially was same. What was Rasulullah doing? This was one way to let the Ummah know from very beginning that the standard for Ummah is one, and the standard for Ahlul Bayt is something else. Salawat Purana Ekbar. And we see that this concept of brotherhood, and equality in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, part of this social justice, concept of Islam has been reinforced, even in the Jamaat prayers. If masjid is built, let's say there is one person who used his entire resources to build without any donation from anyone, and especially not from, Shari'i huquq. We are getting very much dependent on that these days. There was a time where people would used to, build masajid and imam bargah with their own money. And so if somebody builds a masjid, once it is dedicated as a masjid, even the person who totally paid for it cannot say that this spot in the first line is reserved for me. Anyone who comes can basically, sit down and get, do their namaz. And if somebody who normally sits on one musalla and always punctual, comes before of time and sit down, that's fine. But suppose once in a while he became late, and if he saw somebody sitting and said, hello, move, this is my spot. If that other person is being removed by force, his namaz would not be valid. And this is a very important issue that, there is no issue of any color, race, or status when you come in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allama Iqbal has very beautifully, when he says, "A gaya ayn ladai mein agar waqt namaz, a gaya ayn ladai mein agar waqt namaz, qibla ru ho ke zameen boz hui qaum hijaz, ek hi saf mein khade ho gaye mahmood o ayaz, na koi banda raha, na koi banda nawaz." Mahmood and Awaz, this was one of the rulers, and Ayaz was his slave. In the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are same. Bando sahib o muhtaj o ghani ek hue, teri sarkar mein pahunche to sabhi ek hue. Salawat padhna ek baar. Those who didn't Those who didn't understand Urdu, let me try to translate that. When the time comes for prayers during a battle, Muslims prostrate themselves facing the Qibla. In a single row, you witness the ruler standing alongside his slave. Now there is no slave nor master. Slave and master, poor and rich, become one when they stand in your presence, O God. All become same. Salawat padhne ek baar. But the question I have, and this is where I would like to show the distinction of Shia madhab compared to the madhab of the Sahaba. What happened to this Islam of Rasulullah after his wafat? Was this concept of equality and social justice maintained after the Prophet? It is said to say no. And this is where we see the diversion between the two madhab. You can actually look at it from a very, different perspective, but what I have, chosen here to focus on this issue, two topics. One is the issue of marriage, and the other is the issue of distribution of Baytul Mal. When it comes to the issue of marriage, from the Islamic perspective, there is no barrier of marriage between Muslims. In one of the last khutbahs of Rasulullah, in Mina as well as in Ghadir, where he says, لا فضل لعربي على عجمي ولا لعجمي على عربي ولا للأبيض على الأسود ولا للأسود على الأبيض. Rasul was very clear in his last sermon that when it comes to superiority, no Arab has a superiority over non-Arab, and non-Arab has no superiority over the Arab because of the race. A white person has no superiority over the black because of the color. No black has a superiority over the white. إِلَّا بِالتَّقْوَى. The only basis of preference is taqwa and righteousness. They are all, people are all, كُلُّكُم مِّنْ آدَمٍ everyone is from Adam, and Adam was created from the dust. Very clear message. There is no doubt about it. And the Prophet actually in his own life established this principle that even when it comes to marriage, the issue of race, the race or the color or social status is not the issue at all. And one of the things he did, and this is the beauty of Rasulullah's seerah, that he does not only give you concepts, he actually practically showed you examples. When it came to the marriage, one of the things he did was he had someone by the name of Sayyid bin Harisa. Just two words about it. Sayyid bin Harisa was a slave of Bibi Khadija. When Rasulullah married her, Bibi Khadija gifted Sayyid bin Harisa to Rasulullah. He will be your personal slave, to serve you. And Sayyid bin Harisa became so close to Rasulullah, it was no more a master-slave relationship. It became like father and son. To the extent, now Sayyid bin Harisa was not a slave by birth. His family was traveling once. They are from Yemen. And the robbers basically looted them and one of the things they took away was this child by the name of Zayd. And they sold him in the slave market. He ended up among the slaves of Bibi Khadija. When his father came to know that Zayd, my son, is in Mecca, he is the slave of a person by the name of Muhammad bin Abdullah. This is before Islam. He came all the way to Mecca looking for his son. He met Rasulullah, and when he described the situation, Rasulullah said, Bismillah, he is free, you take him. Zayd was called. He saw his father. His father was very happy. He said, no, it's time to go home. Zayd said, I will not prefer you over him. His akhlaq, his character has been so important for me that I will stay with him. So the father became angry and he said, I disown you. Rasulullah stood up. Islam has not yet come in. He says, I adopt Zayd as my son. From that day onwards, he was called Zayd bin Muhammad. Until the ayat came later on when Islam started, when this, adoption system was abolished by Islam. Maintaining, yatim is an important issue, but you can't give your name. And so he was again now called Zayd bin Harisa. So remember that relationship. And he comes from a, ex-slave. In Medina, Rasulullah decided to, arrange his marriage. He selected his own cousin, Zainab bint Jahash. And he basically became the matchmaker there. And he got Zayd bin Harisa married to Zainab bint Jahash. A Qurayshi lady, a Hashimi lady coming from Rasulullah's family. And Zayd with that background of being an ex-slave. But Rasulullah wanted to establish this example that in my views, Zayd is good enough. Because he is a mu'min and Zainab is mu'mina. Al-mu'minu kufwul mu'mina. A mu'min is compatible to a mu'mina as far as marriage is concerned. Salawat padhne ek baar aur. Bilal al-Habashi, who was a slave, then he became free, was tortured because he had accepted Islam while he was still the slave in Mecca. Rasulullah arranged his marriage with the sister of Abdurrahman bin Auf, one of the elite member of Quraysh, just to show that not only the issue of color and race, status also, he was a slave. But when it comes to the issue of marriage, it is more iman and akhlaq which are the main issues. For us, of course, wilayat of Ahlul Bayt and Tashayyu are the main criteria when it comes to the issue of marriage. Salawat padhne ek baar aur. So this was the standard of Rasulullah as far as how to build a community. But you look at the Sunni laws, even now. Even if you go to one of their prominent books, Al-Fiqh al-Mawahib al-Arba, which is a extensive book talking about the laws from 4 schools of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, there you will see that, from early days till now, it is very clear that, for most part, they would say they would not allow, technically, a non-Arab man to marry an Arab woman. A non-Qurayshi or non-Hashimi man is allowed to marry a Qurayshi or a Hashimi woman, but the other way around would not be, according to the Shafi'i law. Even a slave, even after becoming free, may not marry a free woman. And these are all the standards which were not there during the days of Rasulullah. You pick up any Shia fiqh book from the days of Sheikh Saduq to Allama Hilli to the present Maraji, you will see it's very clear. When it comes to the issue of marriage of an Arab woman to a non-Arab man, there is no problem. Hashimi woman to a non-Hashimi, there is no issue. Or the other way around. Of course, we have met this cultural issue, especially in South Asian community, jahan Sayyid ghair Sayyid ka maamla hai. But that's not Shari. I would like to make it clear here. That's our issues. We have been influenced by this Hindu caste system. So, mashallah, Sadat are on level of Brahman. And the others are down there. But from the Shari point of view, there is nothing. You wouldn't see that in any book, from the beginning to the end. Centuries in the Shia fiqh. So Arab woman can marry a non-Arab man, a Hashimi, Sayyid lady can marry a non-Hashimi, or the other way around. Or a woman who are more learned and wealthy can marry a person who is less learned or less, affluent. Because the main issue for us is Iman and Akhlaq and nothing else. Salawat. Going on to another example, and that is about the distribution of Baytul Mal. During the days of the Prophet, especially when it came to Mal-e Ghanimat, after the war, when the Muslims would have the war booty, whatever they gained from the enemy at that time. During the days of Rasulullah, it was equally distributed among those who participated in the battle. Abu Bakr continued that system, but he, only ruled for about 2-3 years. It was the second Khalifa in the year 15 after Hijrah, just 4 years after Wafat of Rasulullah, that he changed the whole system. Even the Baytul Mal, the treasury of the government, which was being distributed among the people, he classified people according to different categories. Their relationships in their tribe, where do they belong. For example, Abbas, the Prophet's uncle, he was given about 12,000 to 25,000 dinar per year. Aisha was given 12,000. Other wives were given 10,000. They are all same, wives of Rasulullah, but there he basically now has different categories. Those who participated in the Battle of Badr, they would get 5,000 each. Those who joined Islam between Badr and Hudaybiyah, they would get 4,000 each. Those who joined Islam after Hudaybiyah and before Qadisiyah, they would get 3,000. Gradually it went down to 2 dinar per year. This is according to Tariq Tabari. We are not talking about Shia sources here. And so this system was changed by the second Khalifa. This issue of distribution of Baytul Mal on the basis of religious identity. Banu Umayyah later on came and intensified that inequality between the Muslims. And then Banu Umayyah became, at the top of the list. They actually, during the time of Banu Umayyah, even if a person becomes a Muslim, he is not accorded the same rights as those who were Muslim by birth. And this basically, during that time, you would see this inequality continues, except for 2.5 years of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, who was a relatively just Khalifa among Banu Umayyah. And this is where, we see that the whole system of equality among Muslims was abandoned by the school of Sahaba. And this did not help the spread of Islam. Because for many centuries, some of these areas that Muslims had conquered after Rasulullah, people, of course, it was to their credit, I would say they would not force them to become Muslim, but there was a reason for it. The people in Egypt, which was the furthest, province of the Muslim world those days, and Iran on the other side, Fars. During the days of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he sent the letters to these two governors on the east and the west, that how come we have been ruling these areas for decades now, but they have not become Muslim. The issue of expansion of Muslim empire is one thing, and the spread of Islam is something else. वो फतूहात जो हैं वो सिर्फ वो हुकूमत को फैलाने के लिए थी, ये इस्लाम को फैलाने के लिए नहीं थी. जो क्रेडिट जहाँ देनी है वहाँ देना चाहिए. And the response they got from the people, from the governor, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he says that if they become Muslims, who will pay the jizya to us? Jizya is the tax that a Muslim government will get from non-Muslims because they don't pay zakat or khums. So you then, ask them to pay jizya. They were more worried about this issue of jizya than spreading Islam. And this is where we see that, these areas, Islam did not go there. You look at North Africa, Morocco area, there the Berber tribe, they were under the control of Muslims, but they did not become Muslim until Idris bin Abdullah, the great-grandson of Imam Hassan, reached there, and he started spreading Islam, and this is where the Berber tribe in North Africa became a Muslim. And so we had to realize that, this issue of, having this different status for people, especially those who were non-Arab, this is, promoting Arabism rather than promoting Islam itself. Salawat. Even a non-Arab, when he or she becomes a Muslim, they don't have the same social security unless they attach themselves to a tribe, the Arab tribe. And then they will call Mawla of this and that tribe, the word Mawla, Mawali. Sometimes those of you who have lived in the Gulf countries, you have the kafil to do business there. It's the same Jahiliyyah system which is continuing now. Even though you might be Muslim or anything, it's your money, you are doing the business there, you can't do it until you have a kifalat from somebody who is a citizen there. And then we say, well, it is a Muslim country, we are with the kafir, at least they respect you as a citizen. And this is where we have to realize that, when we look at the system that Rasulullah brought, this was in a way change. Innovation came in. And the Shia perspective is very clear on this issue. Let me explain more about Amir al-Mu'minin's politics during the time of his Khilafah. Salawat. So for the time of the second Khalifa, you have this different, hierarchy of the Sahaba also. Not every Sahabi is equal in getting the distribution from Baytul Mal. After almost 24 to 25 years, Amir al-Mu'mineen now, the people come to him that we don't want anyone as a leader but you. Imam was hesitant. And I mentioned to you last night that in the very first khutbah, he made it clear that I don't really have an interest in ruling over you anymore, but for two reasons. One is that the support that I see now, which I didn't have during the time after Rasulullah, and the second is the pledge that Allah has taken that you cannot be indifferent if you see Zalim and Mazloom on one side and the other side. You have to get involved to improve the situation. And there, when it comes to one of his first khutbah after accepting, the leadership and khilafat from the people, basically he says something very profound. And I would like to, give you the actual words. He says to the Muslims in Medina, إِنِّي حَامِلُكُمْ عَلَى مَنْهَجِ نَبِيِّكُمْ. I am going to take you on the path of your Nabi. It means till now you have been deviating, going away from the manhaj and the path of Rasulullah. And then he talks about this issue. Who is superior? Who is, preferable to others? He says, Allah. وأيما رجل من المهاجرين والأنصار من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يرى أن الفضل له على من سواه لصحبته. He says, beware, all of the Muhajirin and Ansar, this is the elite class there, who are from the Ashab of Rasulullah, if they think they have preference over others because of their companionship with Rasulullah, then he gives the answer, فَإِنَّ الْفَضْلَ النَّيِّرْ غَدًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. The true preference is there in the eyes of Allah tomorrow on the day of Qiyamah. Don't bring it to me that I am a Sahabi. وَثَوَابُهُ وَعَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. If you are a Sahabi, okay, you'll get the fazilat for it and sawab for it with Allah on the day of Qiyamah. وَأَيُّمَا رَجُلٌ. But remember, إِنَّمَا رَجُلٌ اسْتَجَابَ اللَّهَ وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَصَدَقَ مِلَّتَنَا وَدَخَلَ فِي دِينَنَا وَإِسْتَقْبَلَ قِبْلَتَنَا. Anyone who accepts Allah and Rasul and accepts our deen and our faith, enters into our faith, faces our qibla, فَقَدْ اسْتَوْجِبَ حُقُوقُ الْإِسْلَامِ وَحُدُودُهُ. He has all the rights of a Muslim, and the limitations also will apply to him. فَأَنْتُمْ. Why? Because all of you, Sahaba and غير Sahaba, فَأَنْتُمْ عِبَادُ اللَّهِ وَالْمَالُ مَالُ اللَّهِ. You are the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the property which is there in the public treasury is malullah. يُقْسَمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالسَّوِيَّةِ. It will be distributed among you on the basis of equality. لا فضل فيه لأحد على أحد. Nobody will get more than the other. وَلِلْمُتَّقِينَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ غَدًا أَحْسَنُ الْجَزَاءِ. Yes, you might be muttaqi better than the others, but the reward of taqwa is not from Baytul Mal. It is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tomorrow. لَمْ يَجْعَلَ اللَّهِ الدُّنْيَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ أَجْرًا وَثَوَابًا. Allah did not make Baytul Mal in this dunya as a ajr and sawab and reward for taqwa. وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ لِلْأَبْرَارِ. Whatever Allah has in the akhirah is best for those who are the righteous people. Salawat padne ek baar. There were some people who stood up. Oh Ali, you are going to give it equal amount to me and my slave? And Ali said, what is the difference? In the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there were some prominent people who actually stood up to raise objection to that issue, because They were, used to this special privilege given to them by the second and the third Khalifa. And so Amir al-Mu'minin from day one is already facing opposition on the issue of equality, on the issue of equality of the distribution of Baytul Mal between the Muslims. Salawat Pranay Akbar. Allama Iqbal, again in a different context, where he says, everybody is equal according to the law of nature created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. यही मकसूद फितरत है रमज़ मुसलमानी उख़ुवत की जहाँ गिरी उख़ुवत की जहाँ गिरी मोहब्बत की फरावानी बुतान रंग और खून को तोड़कर मिल्लत में गुम हो जा. Smash these idols of your color and your race and just submerge into the community. Na Turani rahe baqi, na Irani, na Afghani. You can be Afghani, you can be Turani, you can be Punjabi, you can be Sayyid Mirza, you can be Khoja. It's fine. But these issues cannot be the basis of preference in the eyes of Allah, Rasul, and Ali, and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wa salam. Salawat Pranay Akbar. And this is where you will see that the reformation that Amir al-Mu'minin wanted to bring, he got two, responses from the people. Those who were used to these special privileges and unfair distribution of Baytul Mal, they were the first one to oppose him. When the time of Bay'at came, the first people who did Bay'at was Talha and Zubair. They were expecting that Ali will give them a special position or governor or something, in his government. And Amir al-Mu'minin did not consider them to be worthy for that. So he didn't give them. They waited and waited after they realized that he is not going to give us any special, position. This is where then they decided to go. They came to him that we want permission to go for Umrah. Sheikh Mufid, if I can remember, in his book, talks about it, Kitab al-Jamal. He says, Amir al-Mu'minin said, لا تريدون العمرة بل تريدون الغدرة. You are not seeking Umrah, you are doing Ghaddari. You are trying to betray me and go against me, and this is what happened. Then they, convinced Aisha also to join them. This is in Mecca conspiracy, and this is where it ended up in the Battle of Jamal in Basra. So you have that group of those who were elite, who were not able to tolerate the policy of equality and justice of Amir al-Mu'mineen. But then on the other hand, all those who were kind of suppressed by the others, they were the one strongly supportive of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Especially those who were known as Mawali, because they realized that Amir al-Mu'mineen treats us like any other Arab, Qurayshi, Hashimi. He doesn't discriminate when it comes to how to, interact with people, and even especially in the issue of distribution of Baytul Mal. Salawat. Even Muawiyah's opposition was the same issue. He knew that Amir al-Mu'minin is not going to, maintain his governorship in Sham. And it's a long story. And this is where he started conspiracy from before. And he already had 20 years, advantage, where he was already there, governor of Sham, from day one when that area was conquered during the days of the first and the second Khalifa. So he basically, prepared his ground. That if the time comes, I'll be able to, lean on this support And this is where the issue of Jamal comes in, and all the fitna that we see in the world of Islam. Even the event of Karbala is based on that 20 years of advantage which was given to him. And those who gave the advantage are also responsible on this issue. And so it's not really just a poetic statement when people like Al-Balaburi say that, قتل Hussein يوم السقيفة. The murder of Hussein didn't happen in Karbala. The seed was sown in Saqifa. This is how the system was corrupted from very beginning. And this is where we see that Amir al-Mu'mineen, in spite of all this opposition, emerged in the Muslim world as a symbol of justice. Even now, if you go to Lebanon, where there is a sizable Christian minority, they are Arab. Any Arab who wants to be, educated in their own culture and language, they are forced to study even the history of Islam. They also, if they are, men of letters and adab, they will also study Nahil Balagha. And therefore you will see that there are many, many writers in Lebanon from the Christian background who have written about Amir al-Mu'mineen. George Ordaq is the famous one. Look at the title he gives to his book. He says, Ali Sawtul Adalat al-Insaniyya. Ali is the voice of human justice in the world. Means even now when he looks at the seerah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, it is the seerah of justice and equality. Salawat padhne ek baar. United Nations has a section which deals with the Arab countries. And in the year 2002, they came up with a report. It was a kind of a review of the management by the Arab countries, and it was a poor report. And they suggested certain things to them, that this is what you should do. But just to make them convinced on this issue, he said, you don't need to follow the example of the West. It's the United Nations which is giving them an example. You can go back in your own history and look at the example of your Khalifa Ali bin Abi Talib. And they even have some excerpts from the letter that Amir al-Mu'mineen wrote to Malik Ashtar. That look at that and implement that, and you will be able to progress further in your work. Salawat padhne ek baar. This concept of Ali becoming the symbol of justice. Let me just give you one example before I go towards the Messiah. There was a lady, in Yemen there was a tribe which is known as Hamdan tribe. This is the city in Iran. Hamadan is different from this tribe in Yemen known as Hamdan. And they were very much, loyal to Amir al-Mu'mineen. There was a whole neighborhood in Kufa which belonged to them. They even had a large contingent in the troops of Ali in Siffin. And during the time of Siffin, one of the ladies who was with that tribe, she was a poet in her own right. And she had gone to Siffin with her brother and other relatives, and she would actually go into the battlefield before the fighting starts and recite poetry to her own tribe people to encourage them to fight against Muawiyah. And her poetry became very powerful and very much directed towards Banu Umayyah, to the extent that the Shami army of Muawiyah even started remembering some of the lines of poetry of this lady known as Sauda bin Ammar al-Hamdaniyah. Time goes forward. This is after the Shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Muawiyah now is the absolute ruler of the Muslim world. He had a person in Yemen who was also in charge for collecting zakat from that tribe area that she belonged to. And that person was very unjust in the way he behaved with them. And so the tribe people said that, we should go and complain to Muawiyah about this person. Nobody had the courage to go and face Muawiyah. Everybody's eyes went on Sauda bint Ammar al-Hamdaniya. She was a very, not only a bold, but a courageous woman. She said, okay, I'll go and I will represent my tribe there. So she goes to Sham. When she got the opportunity to see Muawiyah, before she goes in, all these, Hawali Mawali, the advisors of Muawiyah, they said, who is this? This is the one who used to recite in Siffin, وَانْصُرُ عَلِيًّا وَالْحُسَيْنُ وَرَحْتُهُ. One line of poetry they, remembered at that time. That she is the one who used to say, support Ali and Hussein and the family, وَقْصُدْ لِهِنْدٍ وَإِبْنَهَا بِحَوَانٍ, and target humiliation for Hind and her son, Muawiyah. And so, so already now Muawiyah has been kind of appraised about this lady. So she goes there and Muawiyah says, you are the one who used to talk against me in your poetry. And she said, of course, there were different times. What would she say? She had to justify it. It's gone, finished. And so Muawiyah said, what is the issue? He said, you have officers there, who are being unfair. And I will come on behalf of my community, my tribe. Look at her style. She says, if you replace them, we will be thankful. And if you don't do anything, we will see what to do. Now, the second part of this statement was kind of a threat. And Muawiyah didn't take it lightly. He said, you are threatening me? That if I don't replace this person with somebody else, you're going to fight against me? And started, using very harsh language against her. At that time, extempore, fil badi, this lady started saying something in form of poetry. She says, صلى الإله على روح تضمنه قبر فأصبح في العدل مدفونا. May Allah bless that soul, that when that soul was taken and buried in the grave, it was not only that soul, but even justice was buried with him. قَدْ حَالَفَ الْحَقُّ لَا يَبْقَ بِهِ ثَمَنًا. He had pledged to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he will not, sell his faith by any price. فَصَارَ بِالْحَقِّ وَالْإِيمَانِ مَقْرُونًا. He became one with truth and iman. So Muawiyah says, whom are you referring to? She says, I am remembering Ali. Because once I went with a similar complaint to Ali. He was doing his nafilah prayer when I reached there. When he realized I am there, he quickly shortened it. And then he turned around and he said, what is the issue? And I explained the complaint. She says, Ali raised his hand and said, oh Allah, you be witness. I have not allowed my officers to behave in this way. And then he wrote the instruction asking this officer to be recalled for investigation. So she is now remembering that incident and comparing with the reaction of Muawiyah. And there she says, may Allah bless that soul, that when he was buried, فَأَصْبَحَ فِيهِ الْعَدْلُ مَدْفُونًا, even justice was buried with him. This is where we see Ali becomes the symbol of adl, equality, and justice. Salawat. So we are Shias because we believe in this concept of justice. Our Imam is Imam al-Adl. Historians have a statement about him. They say, قتل في المحراب لشدة عدله. Ali was killed in the mihrab because he was insistent on the issue of adl. There's quite a lot to say about it, inshallah, some other time. But when we talk about this issue of equality among the believers and the mu'mineen, irrespective of race, color, language, social status, rich or poor, black and white, doesn't matter at all. If you really want to see that composition of the diversity, you look at the ashab of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. In Karbala, you will see people from all racial background, different skin, different color. Even their languages were not always same. Their status in the society was not same. Some of them were highly respected. Some were very, simple people. Some were masters, some were slaves. Some of them came from that background of slavery, although they were not slaves at that time. But look at the way Hussein ibn Ali on the eve of Ashura praises them. They were all different but united on one faith, on one madhab, on one imam, and for one cause. Hussein ibn Ali in Shab Ashur, when he gathered his companions and the male member of the Ahlul Bayt, he says to them, فَإِنِّي لَعَالَمُ أَصْحَابًا أَوْفَى وَلَا خَيْرًا مِنْ أَصْحَابِهِ. I don't know of any companions who were more loyal and better than my ashab. وَلَا أَهْلَ بَيْتٍ أَبَرَّ. And family members who were more, kind. وَلَا أَوْصَلُ مِنْ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي. Who maintained the ties with one another. One of the beauties of this sacrifice is that Hussein was not alone in Karbala. He came almost with the majority of his, close family members and relatives. فَجَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ عَنِّي خَيْرًا. He prays for them. And then he says, أَلَا وَإِنِّي لَعَظُنُّ أَنَّهُ آخِرُ يَوْمٍ لَنَا مِنْ هَؤُلَاءِ. He says, I think this is the last, day that we have tomorrow with them. أَلَا وَإِنِّي قَدْ أَظِنْتُ لَكُمْ فَانْطَلِقُوا جَمِيعًا فِي حِلٍّ لَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنِّي ظِمَامٌ. This is where he declares, he says that I allow you to go. All of you, you are free. There is no bay'at now on you. This pledge of allegiance is lifted from you now. هذا الليل قد غشيكم. The night has come with its darkness. فاتخذوه جملا. In the cover of this darkness, go away. Not only that, each one of you from my ashab, take a member from my Ahlul Bayt with you. وَتَفَرَّقُوا فِي سُوَادِكُمْ. And go to all different areas. فَإِنَّ الْقَوْمِ إِنَّمَا يَطْلُبُونَنِي. Because these people are after my life. If they find me, they will not go after you. And this is where we see that, everyone from Ahlul Bayt, starting with Abbas, from Banu Hashim, and even when it came to the companions, Zuhair Qain was the first one, where he says to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, that even if I am killed 70 times and raised again, and all 70 times my body is burnt and my ashes are sprayed around, and even then, if I become alive, I will sacrifice my life for you. Whereas we here, we will only die only once. But this sentiment shows, the deep devotion that they had to the Imam. And this is where Imam basically, at that time, they were on the level of what we call ilmul yaqeen. They knew their status. They knew if we support Hussein, we will get salvation in the hereafter. But to raise their ilmul yaqeen to aynul yaqeen, Hussein then raised his two fingers and he says, look up here. And he showed them their places, their palaces that Allah has reserved from each one of them separately in the Akhirah. And this is where, when you talk about this motivation to go for Shahadat, they were already there convinced. But Hussein ibn Ali wanted to even elevate their level of, from ilmul yaqeen to aynul yaqeen. On the day of Ashura, when it comes to the Ashab, inshallah, if we get time, we'll talk more about them. I don't think we can do justice as far as the Ashab of Imam Hussein are concerned. But keeping in line with my theme, I would like to tonight talk about one Shaheed whose name was John. He was from the Ethiopian background. He was the slave of Abu Dharr Ghifari. Abu Dharr Ghifari was so loyal to Amir al-Mu'mineen, and this is a lesson that we have to learn. We don't need to confine our vilayat and love for Ahlul Bayt to ourselves. Wherever you see you have influence, where you can bring others towards the vilayat and the love of Ahlul Bayt, you have to do that. John served Abu Dharr al-Ghifari for a long time. And this is because of his, staying companionship with Abu Dharr. He became a very strong supporter of Ali bin Abi Talib. After Abu Dharr, he becomes free. But he goes to Ali. He says, please allow me to serve you, become your nokar. I don't want to go anywhere. Amir al-Mu'minin accepted that. He stayed with Ali, served Ali. After Ali with Imam Hassan alayhi salam. After that with Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He's become kind of a family member. That when Hussein leaves Medina, John is with him. When he leaves Mecca to go to Kufa, John is with him. On the day of Ashura, when the companions started, going for their struggle and their jihad and the sacrifice, one after another, John goes to the Imam. He looks at the Imam and he says, I also want to attain the same status as them. Imam looked at John, his age, his service for decades, if not years, for the Ahlul Bayt. And Imam, out of his own greatness, he says, John, I don't want you to suffer like us. I don't want you to go through this process. And Imam refused. He tried again and again. But John had lived with Ali. He had lived with Hassan. He lived with Hussein. He knew the sentiments of the Ahlul Bayt. Sometimes when you have to beg for something, you should know how to beg. He knew that if I approach Hussein in a different way, he is not going to refuse. And that is where he brings himself to the lowest level, where he says, Hussein, I know I'm not like you. You are tahir and tayyib. You are pure.
my body also, my sweat has a smell. But I will not be satisfied until my blood spills and mix with your blood. Hussain ibn Ali realized that he cannot say no anymore. And he allowed John to go and fight. John goes. An old person, how long could he fight? When he is killed, he goes, Imam Hussain alayhi salam goes to the body of John with his ashab, and he stood up there. Very unique. He doesn't do this for many other shuhada. He raised his hand and did dua. It seemed that the words of John were still ringing in his ears. He says, Allahumma bayyiz wajhu. O Allah, give light to his face. O Allah, give good smell to his body. And O Allah, keep him with Muhammad and Ali Muhammad on the day of Qiyamah. Azadaran Hussain, ये एक साबी गुलाम था. ये खिदमत गुजार था, नौकरी करता था अहले बैत की. लेकिन जिस इनकिसारी के साथ उसने इजाज़त मांगी है, हुसैन के लिए इनकार करना मुमकिन नहीं था. लेकिन हम जॉन से सिर्फ एक जुमला कहेंगे कि जॉन, तुम फिर भी बहुत ही खुशनसीब हो कि तुम्हारी शहादत के बाद हुसैन जैसा इमाम सय्यद शबाब अहल जन्नह ने तुम्हारे लाश पर खड़े होकर दुआ की है. लेकिन खुद हुसैन जब आखिरी वक्त आया है, कोई वहां दुआ करने वाला नहीं था. एक बहन थी जो तिल्ले ज़ैनबिया से हुसैन के कत्ल के मंजर को देखती रही, लेकिन कोई वहां दुआ करने वाला नहीं था. जॉन, आप बहुत ही खुश नसीब है और यकीनन आपके दरजात अल्लाह की नज़र में अजीम है. अला रहमतुल्लाहि अलैहि अला लानतुल्लाहि अलल कौमिज़ ज़ालिमीन सयअलमुल लज़ीना ज़लमू अय्य मुनक़लिबिन यनक़लिबून. खुदावंद इस क़लील बाद कबूल फरमा, हमारे गुनाहों को बख्श दे, हमारे तौफ़ीक़ात में इज़ाफ़ा फरमा. खुदावंद आलम इस्लाम में सुलह और अमन की फ़िज़ा पैदा कर. शियों के दुश्मन जहाँ जहाँ हैं उनकी तमाम सलाहियतों को नीस्त व नाबूद फरमा. इमाम के ज़ुहूर में ताजल फरमा. रब्बना तक़ब्बल मिन्ना इन्नका अंतस समीउल अलीम.